All right, welcome back to Always Adaptive. My name is Randall James, and my guest today is Dr. Sean Pastuch. He's someone who's been challenging the way the fitness world thinks about pain, performance, and also professionalism among trainers. Dr. Sean is the founder and CEO of Active Life, and he's built a movement that trains coaches to think more like problem solvers and less like rep counters. And he's one of the rare voices pushing for real skill in an industry that still rewards surface level knowledge. In this conversation, we talk about the blind spots in coaching, how to elevate the service trainers can provide, the direction of the medical and fitness industry, and what it really is a trainer should be doing. This is one of those interviews where I just kind of let Dr. Sean do his thing. He has a lot of thought-provoking ideas, and it was fun teasing some of that out. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video, and don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. All right, Dr. Sean, welcome to Always Adaptive. How you doing, man?
I'm awesome, Randall. Thank you for bringing me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It really means a lot. I've been following you for a while now, and what's always standing out to me is that you're challenging norms, the status quo. So let's start there. What do you think most people misunderstand about what you're trying to do online, and what are you trying to do online?
I don't really think about what people are misunderstanding about what I'm doing online as much as I think about what I think people are misunderstanding in general that I'm trying to help them. I think we're living in a world where between 55 million and 100 million Americans, depending on how you measure it, I think it's probably closer to 55 million, are waking up in pain every single day and will for the rest of their lives. And they're doing that not because they're broken, but because they're afraid of the pain. They've been told if it hurts, don't do it. But they've never been told what it means to hurt. And so they end up living in this cage of hypervigilance, afraid of everything that they feel, and not doing the things that they actually need to do to resolve the problem in the first place. I want people to recognize that the life that they want is still possible. In fact, it's probable if they take the appropriate actions towards it. But avoiding the things that cause discomfort is not the appropriate action. That's what I'm trying to teach.
Okay. No, I like that a lot. And to your point about vigilance, I have a client now who he's working with a chiropractor, and he has a little bit of a curvature in his spine. And she was concerned about doing goblet squats because she didn't want him to veer off to one side. And I'm like, you just bent down a moment ago with one arm and used rotation in a weird way to pick up a kettlebell. Like, these are things that we shouldn't be concerned of or afraid of, rather, because that's only going to make the problem worse.
Your friend has a chiropractor who told her that she should not do goblet squats because there's a rotation in her spine. Is that right?
Right.
Your friend should.
Yeah.
What's that?
His chiropractor, but yeah.
Okay. So your friend, so it's a he. Your friend has a curvature in his spine, and his chiropractor told him he should never do goblet squats because of leaning into the curvature or something.
Yeah, that it could start to shift over to one side, compensation, stuff of that nature.
Yeah. Your friend should never go back to that chiropractor again. Let me share a story with you if it's okay.
Sure.
My goddaughter is about 5'10". She's a really good volleyball player. And she just went through a huge growth spurt, about 5 inches in the last year. She's 14. She went to a chiropractor for a routine checkup. Her mom likes the chiropractor, took her daughter with her. Chiropractor did an evaluation, found some mild scoliosis. This hip is higher than that hip, and wants to go get all kinds of imaging done. The mom calls me, my friend calls me and says, do you think this is important? What do you think this could be? And I told her, you have a 14-year-old daughter who just went through a growth spurt, who has no pain whatsoever, who has no performance lapses whatsoever, no discomfort, no struggle sleeping, no dysformity. You didn't even notice it. And you're a nurse. You never noticed it in your daughter when she wears a bathing suit. This is nothing. There is no reason to bring to your daughter, who has all of the confidence in the world right now, that there is a reason why she maybe shouldn't be so confident. She's healthy. This is a normal variant. It's not something that we want. Certainly, we'd rather have a straight spine, everything perfect. That'd be great. But find me someone who has everything perfect. They don't exist. And I told her there's no reason to go back to that doctor. There's no reason to get those x-rays. If she has any questions, tell her she can reach out to me and I'll help her with it. But for clarity, never go back to that doctor.
Yeah. I mean, it's It's interesting, man, because like again, it goes back to hypervigilance. Is there actually even a problem there? And as you say, no one's perfect. Like, and you can get stuck in a trap of trying to chase perfection. Like, oh, this side's stronger than the other side, or you're not fully extending on this side. But it's like, is it actually a problem? Is it impeding your performance? Is there pain? No, then what are you worrying about it for?
Well, I've worked with some athletes who, for example, baseball players, who rotate really well towards one side and not as well to the other side. If I fix that, I pull a few miles per hour off of their fastball, make them less excellent at their sport, but I make them perfect for, some random version of somebody's diagnostics. What you're looking for in a person when you're evaluating is, does their body and their functionality and their mindset match the needs of the life that they're coming to you to live? Not does it match some random nonsensical set of norms. Because I don't want my people who I'm helping to feel as though my job is to help make them normal. They are excellent for a reason. Um, you talked about chasing perfection. There's something perhaps even more dangerous than chasing perfection, and that is chasing down the resolution of weakness that never needs to be resolved. So let me give you, an example of that. Jeff Bezos talks about one-way doors and two-way doors. And one-way doors are things that we can start doing that if we find that they're not working, it's very easy to change course and go back the other way. I'm sorry, two-way doors are very easy to walk in and then walk back out of. We start something, it's not working, let's just walk back the other way. A one-way door is very difficult to turn around. So in the case of our own bodies, if we find, for example, that, we have a mild rotation of our spine, but no symptoms, no function loss, no deformity, nothing. And then we start chasing down the curve and trying to replace the curve that's existing with the curve that's quote unquote normal. We can spend years making little to no progress, beat down our self-confidence, do exercises that solve a problem that doesn't exist instead of exercises that are solving a problem that does exist. The opportunity cost is there, and not ever realize it until years upon years later when we need an entire re-education that we were never broken in the first place and therefore didn't need to be fixed. That's the danger. It's spending years chasing a problem that doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I totally agree. I think as my career has gone on, this is no shade at Gray Cook and correctives and all that stuff, but I was like obsessed with it to a certain degree. And as I've learned more and more, I've kind of backed off of that, even in terms of like the sort of functional warm ups that I would do before my training, where I spend less time doing that stuff and just more time doing the things that I want to do. And it's interesting. I actually feel better now. I'm not going to say any of that stuff. I don't know, but it's almost like, why were you obsessing about that stuff in the first place back then?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we stay on Gray Cook for a second, I've never met Gray Cook. I've never had a conversation with him. I imagine if you asked him, is the FMS that you designed or the SFMA that you designed exactly how you would design it today? He would say no. He would say, I've learned things since then, and it was a great tool for when it came out because we have to give it the respect that it deserves. There was nothing else like it. It was a really simple way for a trainer to be able to evaluate a client and get some measurable, repeatable, at least to some degree, data that they could work against. Without guys like Gray Cook, it's hard for me to come through and do what I did. Is what he did perfect? No. Is what I do perfect? No. It's about being able to apply it in a way that's beneficial to the person you're applying it to. And if we become obsessed with things, if we look at like we're working to that metric, then I think that we end up far too myopic in our training and we can lead ourselves completely down the wrong path.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. So, I mean, I guess on that point, because I know do you have your own assessment system with Active Life? Am I getting
Come
that right?
on, Randall. Come on. Yeah, we do, of course. It's but here's the thing, right? Our assessment system is responsive to what we find in the client. So we have basic assessments that we'd like to know about every client that we see that are like the vital signs. But what we evaluate after that, or even on the way to that, varies from person to person. For some people, it's appropriate that we be looking for that. For other people, it's inappropriate that we be looking for our own vital signs in the very beginning. Our assessment process with a client takes a little bit over 2 weeks.
Oh,
When
wow.
we work with a client one on one, what we do is we provide them, we have a Let me walk you through the process. We start off with an interview on the phone to identify, do we actually think this is somebody that we can help and want to help? We then invite that person in for a more thorough evaluation. The first phone call takes about 45 minutes. The evaluation takes 90 minutes to 2 hours. Oftentimes, we don't even offer that person enrollment with us because we're not confident that we're the right fit. Now, if we do think that we're the right fit, what ends up happening is we use the data that we collected on that first day and we extrapolate it out over the next 2+ weeks to build what it is that that person genuinely has going wrong. We can't possibly test for enough in one day to understand what that person's going to need to solve the problem that they came to us for. So we do that over the course of 2+ weeks. When they're done with those 2+ weeks of evaluation, we create what's called a functional diagnosis. A functional diagnosis is not a medical diagnosis. It's simply a measure of what's strong, what's weak, what knowledge do you have, what knowledge are you missing, what is your goal, what are the KPIs, the key performance indicators of human performance mentally and physically, that if you had, would make it unreasonable that anything but your goal has been achieved. So for example, you want to be able to run a marathon. Great. Let's just take that as a goal. Right now, your back hurts. We think you should be able to touch your toes to be able to run a marathon with lower risk than if you couldn't touch your toes. We think that you should be able to have stamina that is similar on the left than it is on the right. And we think that that stamina should be significant given the task that you have at hand. We think that you should be able to rotate to both sides. We think you should be able to resist rotation to both sides. We think you should be able to understand when you should be working hard and when you should be focused more on recovery. These are just some examples of KPIs. We have 14 pages of single line KPIs. And each person who comes into work with us gets their own very specific list of relevant KPIs to them. So when we start working with them as a client, we're not just working towards some innocuous goal that is unclear if we're getting closer to it. We're working towards that list of KPIs, which are highly measurable. And the thesis is if you can do all of these things, of course you're going to be able to do what you came here for. And that's what I think is necessary to build a real thorough evaluation. An overhead squat is not a movement assessment that tells us anything except that you can't overhead squat or that you can.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And that's sort of, again, no shade at Gray Cook. And again, he was a pioneer, but taking things, bits and pieces from all of the different things that I've learned over the years. And I think that's how it should be too, by the way. It's like, it's ever evolving. No one has the perfect answers, like you said. And so you just take what makes sense. So like, instead of an overhead squat, how did they just regular squat in the first place? Like, why overcomplicate it?
I don't even do that because what I'm finding with a regular squat is I have to mix their skill set, their flexibility, their mobility, their current condition. How recovered are they from yesterday? How did they sleep? All of these things play a role. So to me, I like to, and I understand the relevance of both sides. I like to work bottom up, not top down. Bottom up means I'm assessing every relevant joint passively and actively. I'm then creating a predictive model of how I think that person could move if everything else is good. Right, if you have full range of motion across all of the relevant joints in squatting, so let's just say, for example, ankles, knees, hips, spine, shoulders. You have all the range of motion necessary to do that with a barbell on your back or overhead, wherever you want it to be, or no barbell at all. Now I watch you squat. Ooh, that doesn't look like it could have looked. That's an indicator that something is off that is not at the joint level. It's a strength thing, it's a stamina thing, or it's a skill thing. So the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at the strength. The strength is going to be next. Do you have the necessary strength to perform this movement? Just because your joints can get you into that position doesn't mean that you can. Let's say you do have the strength. Fantastic. You should be able to do that. Now we can start working on what are the cues that I need to give you so that I can watch you do this exercise properly. But too often what happens is a trainer sees a client do an exercise wrong. What do? They cue the skill. The skill is the top of the hierarchy. That we haven't even established that person has the requisite access to the ranges of motion that they need to be able to apply that skill. Let's do that first.
Yeah. But you're So when you address every joint passively and actively, are you going down from the feet too and just working your way up systematically?
Yeah, we don't. The order of operations of what you're evaluating when is irrelevant as long as we're evaluating all of it before we start to load it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned trainers a few times. What I believe and quote me, correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I feel like I've heard you say before that coaches are really underdeveloped in communication and building relationships with clients. Can you say a bit more about that?
Coaches and trainers are underdeveloped in their ability to communicate with clients because coaches and trainers are underdeveloped in their ability to communicate with themselves first. I think it's not unique to the training world. This is just people. People often forget that everybody else is genuinely trying their best to do their best. Whether they're accomplishing it or not is another thing. Whether they're doing it a way that you would do it if you were them is another thing. Whether they're taking your coaching is another thing. But before we can ask someone to change the way that they're behaving, we need to understand why they're behaving the way that they are. And I think that in order to understand the way that somebody else is behaving, we have to understand how we're perceiving them and how they're perceiving us. And the only way I know to understand how to do that is to really get to know myself. I need to know my tendencies. I need to know my biases. I need to know my strengths. I need to know my weaknesses. Because if I'm evaluating somebody and they're doing something in a way that I want them to change, the first thing I need to do is check myself. Do they need to change that? Is it in their best interest to change that? Or do I want them to change that to fit some box that I've unconsciously built for them? That's the first thing I need to do. I need to make everything as conscious as possible. And I think that the reason why we have such a communication gap between the professional and the client is in general because the professional hasn't looked hard enough at themselves. And that starts to get broken down really, really simply and clearly when you ask a few questions. When I ask a trainer, is your audience mostly trainers or individuals, do you think?
It's probably individuals, people that like science.
Okay. So if I talk to the individual who's listening to this right now about their career and I ask them, who is the person you are excellent at helping? Most people haven't actually considered the answer to that question. And they'll give you an answer. They'll give you a range. And if the follow-up question becomes, who is a person who might come to you for help, who would be better for you to turn down? And now there's a caveat. It has to be a person who has all of the right mental characteristics. There's no cop-outs allowed. You can't say someone who's not ready to work hard, someone who doesn't trust the process, someone who won't do what they're taught to do, someone who's not coachable. No, 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 no. They have all those things. Who is a person you would turn away anyway? For example, if I had someone who came to me and said, I run a 4-4-1 40-yard dash, and I want to run a 4-3-9 because I play cornerback, and the amount of money that a cornerback makes when they run a 4-3-9 compared to a 4-4-1 in the NFL draft is roughly 3x in their rookie contract. 0.2 seconds, less than 1% of the total time. It's half of 1% of the total time. 3x the pay. Could I help that person? Yeah. Would I be able to identify areas that they could work on that would help them get faster? For sure. Could I build a more durable body that could handle speeds that right now their body is probably inhibiting them from achieving? Definitely. Would I take that person as a client? 0% chance. There is somebody who focuses exclusively on developing speed in a straight line. That person can walk circles around me when I'm working my hardest for the client. They would casually be walking circles around me doing a better job. I'd rather refer you to them.
Sure. Yeah, or people that are in pain. Well, so you're a chiropractor. I mean, that kind of segues into that, but I think trainers have kind of an issue turning people down that are outside of their scope in terms of injury and stuff too. How do you feel about trainers stepping into that lane? I know you've spoken about it before about trying to get coaches to feel more comfortable working with those people, but like, what are your thoughts on pain in general and coaches working with them?
What are my thoughts on pain in general? You've opened up a can of worms, my friend.
I know.
So I've been a chiropractor since 2009, but I was a trainer in 2005. So I've been doing both for 20 years. I stopped treating patients in 2018. And I stopped training clients in 2020, but I'm about to take on 3 to 4 clients to just focus a lot of attention on them.
I saw. That's exciting.
Thank you. There is a larger, the space, let me start over. The space between where the fitness industry acumen ends and the medical system acumen begins, that space between those two is larger than either the fitness industry or the medical industry combined. It's the coach's job to learn how to fill that space. To me, that's the biggest blue ocean that there is in the healthcare fitness gray zone. I'll share with you how I know that that's the truth. Right now, as I think I started when we were talking, there are between 55 million and 1 million people living in chronic pain. So between 55 million and 100 Americans every day wake up in chronic pain. That means that they have been in pain for 3 months or more without resolution. For most of those people, that pain is going to be permanent for the rest of their lives. That 20% number is the same across the developed world. England has it, Spain has it, France has it, Japan has it. So 20% of the developed world is living in chronic pain. Now, the medical system looks at resolving that from a purely biomedical perspective. What drugs, what surgery, what shot will solve that problem? Well, they've been doing that, and it's not working. The fitness industry looks at that as if it hurts, we can find another way to do it. We can work around it. Problem. But I want to encourage people to consider what's actually happening to the person who's dealing with that pain day to day. They don't care about the pain. They truly don't. Nobody in pain cares that they are in pain. They care about the pain the instant that it threatens their way of life. That's when it becomes a problem. So it's not the pain, it's the way of life. We, as trainers, can help people reclaim that way of life. And on the way to it, their pain will be resolved because it's the only way to get the way of life back. Now, some more statistics that I think will be helpful to elucidate the size of the problem. We spend $600 billion in the American healthcare economy annually on chronic pain. That is more money on chronic pain than is spent on diabetes, heart disease, and cancer combined. So now let's think about that for a second. It's the number one cause of early disability and retirement. It doesn't get resolved by the medical system or the fitness industry. The people who are struggling with it don't care about the pain. They care about what the pain is threatening in their life. And it's become so common that people think it's normal. But when you offer somebody a way back into the life that they want and out of the pain, if they believe that it's truly going to do that for them, they will take that opportunity. And when you provide them with the result that you promised, they will evangelize. That's what we've seen at Active Life. We started off as a CrossFit gym and a chiropractic clinic. And now we've developed hundreds of coaches from around the world and helped thousands of people from around the world to get out of pain without giving up their active life.
Now, am I hearing then that you're saying that trainers should treat pain?
Hell no. So there's a difference between treating pain and helping a person. The word treatment should never come out of a trainer's mouth.
Agreed.
You're not treating anything. To treat something is to recognize a tissue dysfunction that you have a reparative solution for. It's tissue specific, organ specific, system specific. You follow me there?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you just had ACL surgery. You got a tendon graft from your hamstring. There is a physical therapy protocol that you would go through if you saw a medical professional that has been proven to work to give you healthy knees after ACL repair. That is not the job of a trainer. The job of a trainer is your ACL is good to go. Now I want you to start easing back into it. Well, what does that mean? What does ease back into it mean? How many people do you know who've been told to ease back into it, who have no idea what ease back into it means?
Yeah.
That's the trainer's job. But now if you ask a trainer, somebody just had ACL repair. They went through their rehab and now they're ready to ease back into it. What would you do on day 1? And how would that be different on day 30? They're going to generally give you non-specific answers. That's unacceptable. The trainer needs to know specifically what's going to happen every single day. Where are we going to deviate from that plan? Based on what feedback? When should that person be ready to do everything they were doing before? Another example, somebody has back pain. They go to the orthopedist, they get a surgery or they don't get a surgery. They go to a physical therapist, they get treated. Great. Physical therapist says, this is the best it's going to get. What's important for people to know is a physical therapist or a chiropractor is working towards what's called ADLs. So they are helping somebody achieve activities of daily living. You can go online and you can look up what is considered an activity of daily living so that a physical therapist or a chiropractor can legally treat the patient. What you'll find is that you are not inspired by any of those ADLs, but it does fit the adage that a sick person only has one goal, one problem, right? The person who can't walk, they just want to be able to walk. That's not the job of the trainer. But now that that person can walk, but they can't walk for distance, they get pain if they walk for too long. They get pain if they climb stairs. They get pain if they try to exercise. Yeah, that's in the wheelhouse of the trainer who has the proper education, because that's not an activity of daily living. That's an activity of daily interest, which is not a real term. I made that up, but I like it. That person can't do something that they want to do that the government and the malpractice insurance companies and the credentialing boards don't believe is important enough for the medical professional to focus on. That's the fitness professional's job, but they don't get to take a 2-day course and mail it in on that. It's not fish oil and squats.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's an interesting segue too, because I think you did make a post a while ago. And just to be clear, I'm not sure where I stand on this. I see pros and cons to both, but
Push me, man.
do you think personal training should be regulated and, but in the same vein covered by insurance?
No, I don't think it should be regulated or covered by insurance. What I think should happen is the standard should not be set by the government. The standard should be set by the industry itself. So, for example, I don't want to come up with an example that is credentialed by the government without being clear about who credentialed it. But I would love it if, in order to get a job working in a big box gym, as a for example, there was a minimum standard. If to get a job working in a CrossFit gym, there was a minimum standard. And if that minimum standard was accepted across the board. And I think that if a member of one of those gyms who has paid one of those gyms, and even more significantly paid one of those trainers, if that person knew that the trainer they're working with might not know what normal blood pressure is, might not know what an appropriate resting heart rate is, might not know what normal body fat percentage is, might not know anything about the appropriate ranges of motion of a given joint and the structures that limit it, I think that they would be pretty angry. Why am I paying hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, to work with an expert who doesn't know what structures are limiting the range of motion of my knee, and then telling me to squat deeper? I believe that that is a fundamental problem with the fitness industry, why it's not accepted by the world as an expert field, why it's not financially incentivized for most people who do it, and why it's in a lot of ways a cesspool of influencer knowledge. Now,
Yeah.
as far as the insurance thing goes, the insurance answer is I'm trying to be careful with how I titrate this, only for the sake of brevity for you. Insurance was not created to do what insurance is doing today. And so insurance is failing the American people today as a result of both corporate greed and overwhelm. So let me give you some really simple history nuggets so that you can understand what I'm describing.
Sure.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, if I'm not mistaken, was the evolution of the first insurance company that was ever in the United States. But it wasn't set up as an insurance company. It was set up as a way for a private business to be able to get a competitive advantage over its competing employers. What they recognized was that healthcare was difficult for their employees to get. They didn't have access to doctors very often, and when they did, it was fairly expensive. And so what they did is they said, listen, if you ever need a doctor, like if you're dying, something terrible goes wrong, and we're talking about close to 100 years ago, if not, I think a little bit more than 100 years ago, we'll then pay for the doctor for you. And then that became, oh, well, if we want to compete with that company, we have to do that too. And then it became an arms race. Then they split that off, and they're like, we can charge people who are not our employees to do this. And then it started to make money. Then they started to recognize, oh, we don't even make our money off of the whatchamacallit. We don't even make our money off of our subscribers. We make our money by knowing exactly how much money we're going to have to pay out in a given year and taking the rest of it and investing it into the markets and allowing that to grow. That's how insurance companies make money. The reason why Warren Buffett bought Geico, I know it's not medical insurance, but it's the same idea. The reason he bought Geico is because he knows exactly how much money is going to pay out from that company every single year and what percent of revenue that is. And he takes the rest of it and he invests it in the market. That's how insurance companies make money now. What people don't know is that there's a law on the books that says insurance companies have to spend 80% of the money that comes in on medical services. 20% of it can go towards administrative fees and profit. Insurance companies, on average, profit less than 3%. So the insurance company is making less than $400 per year per person. Our thought process is insurance companies are raking. Now they are, because there are 300 million people who are using insurance, 250 million or 300 million, whatever the actual number is. That's a lot of people to be making $300 to $400 a year off of. Am I here defending the insurance companies? No, not at all. What I'm describing is that we have a system that is bloated because the American person needs more health care than they're supposed to need. The way I like to think of it is the American healthcare system is like a truck that was meant to handle 20,000 pounds. The driver of that truck keeps on taking money from people to put their problem on the back of the truck, even though the truck is already loaded to 40,000 pounds. He goes to the government and says, this truck can't handle this load. The government bolsters the truck again. It gives it some nonsense repair. It says, now you can handle 40,000. You can even handle 42,000. And now instead of just taking that out and going for a drive and delivering all of the solutions, it says, if you'll pay, I'll take your problem too. Now the truck weighs 42,000 pounds. It's at its max again. It goes back to the government. The government, you follow this vicious cycle?
Yep. Yeah.
The problem that nobody wants to look at is who's giving the truck driver the packages. We are. Our fastest way out of a broken healthcare system is not needing it. I'll tell you a brief story about personal trainers and insurance. I was speaking at an event and I spoke right after the president of a large organization in the fitness industry. And all of these gym owners in the room asked this person, when are we going to get insurance for our trainers? When is insurance going to cover our trainers? She's like, we're working on it. We're working on it. We're working on it. I have my whole talk built. I have a slideshow built. I'm like, this is bothering me because they shouldn't be covered. So I go in and on my talk, I follow her and I said, look, this isn't in my talk. But the reason why your trainers are not covered by health insurance, one of the reasons, is because they're not even close to good enough. They don't beat a pair of sneakers and an open road at getting people healthy. And I can prove it, but I don't need to. You're going to prove it. I want you to imagine right now, there is a camera crew that is streaming to hundreds of millions of Americans, and they are in your gym while you're here. And what's going to happen is they're going to spin a hopper, and they have a person with some disease, some injuries, some medical history that's complicated. And that person is going to go through an evaluation and a training session with one of the trainers in your gym, whichever one comes out of the hopper. And it's going to be streamed to 100 million people. I'd like you to raise your hand if you want that to happen in your gym right now. No hands went up. I said, why are we talking about what we think we deserve instead of looking at what we know we need to improve?
Powerful, man. Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. And it is a shame that there are those of us that work incredibly hard only to be associated with the worst of us. And I'm not sure what to do about it. I mean, you mentioned it would be great if there was like a standard set across the board that everyone had to meet in order to get hired at any gym. I mean, how do you fix that problem? Like, how do you get that sort of standard set across the board? And what does that standard look like? I know, obviously, you guys have a pretty rigorous program. It's 14 months, if I'm remembering that
13
correctly.
months and about 1,000 hours to get through our core curriculum. And then there are specialties and things of that nature afterwards. I don't worry about that anymore. I used to, but what I found was that the fitness industry wasn't welcoming to criticism, even when it was constructive. I've met with the upper level leadership. I'm talking about the very, very top CEO level at CrossFit. They came to me to ask for help for how they could make their product even safer, because I don't believe CrossFit is inherently dangerous as compared to anything else. When I presented it to them, they were interested, and then they put their level 1 trainers in our course, and their level 1 trainers said, this is not worth asking our trainers to go through it all. And for the record, I'm not blind to the reality that it's possible that they just didn't think it was any good. And I'm okay with that. Um, but I don't believe that's what happened. And I was prepared to give it to them, as I told them, for free. CrossFit runs a program they call the Judges Course. They charge $20 to somebody to go through it so that they can, endorse that somebody went through the Open properly, which is their worldwide competition. They sell it for $20. So you could do the same thing with our movement assessment and just teach coaches how to do movement modifications, and you can keep the $20. We'll just give you the content. Again, I'm open to the idea that they just didn't think it was any good. I just don't think that's what happened. When you go to the commercial gyms, after I gave that talk, I had 18 commercial gym owners come up to me and ask me if I would help their personal training departments in their gym. They walked up after the talk and asked me that. When I asked them which gym that they owned they wanted to start with, they said, how do we decide? I said, you got to pick the one where you trust the management and the trainers the most. I said, we don't trust the management and the trainers in any of our gyms. So then we have nothing to talk about. There's no business to be had here. And if you ask a trainer, what do they believe they need to learn? Usually it's very surface level stuff. They're not interested in believing that the person who is coming into them with an injury is somebody that they don't know how to help. And so what I found was it didn't matter what we did. Free seminars, free online offerings, free live offerings. When COVID hit, we gave away almost $2 million worth of education. And the people who got the free education, for the most part, didn't do it. The people who pay us do. The people who pay us double their income in a year, oftentimes tripling. The average is between 2 and 3x their income in a year. They start working with a totally different client set. So the reason I share that with you is because the efficacy is undeniable. But whether or not somebody's going to apply it depends on if somebody believes they have a problem that they want to solve and that we can help them do that. Most of the industry does not believe that it has a problem. So I've stopped worrying about trying to help them solve it. And my intention is to build an entire industry that lives in between the fitness industry and the healthcare industry, that people can clearly identify that is where the professional I need to go to works. If I have a problem that the fitness industry has tried and failed to solve, and the medical system has tried and failed to solve.
Yeah, you mentioned before the blue ocean between those two, the fitness professional and the medical industry. So how do you fill that ocean? Like how do you bridge that gap? Like obviously I know that's something you're trying to do.
Undeniable proof that we can help the person who falls into it. We fill the gap between fitness and healthcare by providing undeniable evidence that we can help the person who can be helped by neither. And that's really, really simple. It's so easy. It's so easy. It's borderline sad. Now, how do we get that out to the market? That's a totally different question. That's a marketing question. We've developed, I want to say, in the 500 coaches area. I don't know the exact number. I probably should. It would sound more credible if I was like 542, but It's in the 500 range. We have a map at activelifeprofessional.com. You can go to find a pro near me, and you'll find all of the people who went through our education, are going through our education, and continued with their necessary education for CEU on that map. You type your zip code in, you will find somebody near you or you won't. It really depends on where you live. My job is to make clear to the audience at large that there are people who can help them when fitness and medical can't, and then you can find them on this map so that more and more people want to get themselves on this map.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's it's like muddy waters, because when I hear you say that, it's like when medical can't, I try to put myself in like a physical therapist's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were a physical therapist and I heard you say that, it would sound like you're saying we can help your medical problems. Like if someone's in pain, for example, and they've tried physical therapy or whatever, and they're kind of in no man's land, and you're like, come on over here, we have the answers to that. And the physical therapist is like, whoa, hold on a second, that's outside of your scope. Like, how do you communicate that, I guess? Like, what is the idea being communicated there?
Yeah, first of all, you failed. Don't worry about whose scope this is in. You failed. You've demonstrated that it's outside of yours. So now it's our turn. Now what our responsibility is to stay within what is genuinely our scope. And now who dictates that is not some blowhard physical therapist who failed to help their patient. It's the professional practices liability insurance that our providers carry. So if you go to the professional practices liability insurance that you're carrying and you say, if I do X with a client and they get hurt, they die, am I covered? If the answer is yes, that's in your scope. And now if this physical therapist, by the way, have fun with this one, physical therapists, go to their malpractice and they say, if I did that same thing with somebody, absent an ICD-9 code, and they got hurt or they died, am I covered? Then come back to me and tell me whose scope it's in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
Something I thought about for social media is just calling insurance companies and asking them, whose scope is this in?
Because I'm going to try that now. Just see, I'd be curious to see, what next would say to that sort of thing, just for shits and gigs.
Yeah. You got to give them clear parameters and ask them, would I be covered? Now, to go a step further than that, there are physical therapists who can do everything that we teach someone to do. This is not all physical therapists lack the skills to help their patients argument. It is not that argument at all. It is a, generally speaking, physical therapy, chiropractic, orthopedics, the medical system lacks the skills to meet people where people are and solve their problems in a way that inspires those people, period. There are outliers to that general rule. The same is true in the fitness industry. There are fitness pros who can do everything that we train people to do. They've stumbled onto it themselves through really hard work, incredible consistency, a lot of failure, and overwhelming amounts of humility. But they are not common. And so you couldn't tell your aunt who lives in another state, just look up a personal trainer near you and work with them. Like you couldn't
I wouldn't
tell
trust
them,
that at all.
No. Just like you couldn't tell them, look up a physical therapist near you. They can help you. Both of those things lack inspiration. Yeah. I would tell both of those fields, stop looking at me. I'm not your problem. Your peers are.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it is such a good point. I think about that if I had a family member that asked me if they came to me with a problem and I was like, yeah, just go find a physical therapist. I'd be like, yeah, I don't think I'd trust anyone without like some really serious vetting. And I mean, I think with physical therapists and chiropractors and all of the like, I think the big issue is that they don't have a fitness background. Like you said, I can't remember the acronym you used, but they're trying to get them back to, regular day activities and stuff. And for someone, let's take myself, for example, if I'm trying to get back to certain things, it's going to look much different than the average activities that they'd be trying to get me back to.
Mm-hmm. And there are physical therapists who can do that. And there are chiropractors who can do that. But they're the needle in a haystack. How do you find a needle in a haystack, Randall?
I don't know.
With a match.
Okay. All right. Got me.
But who's ready to burn down the whole system?
Yeah.
We need another haystack.
Seems like you are filling that gap.
I am filling that gap.
Yeah. I want to respect your time, but just one last question. I really respect that you turned active life into a brick and mortar. I heard you talking on the Ready State podcast about how you wanted proof of concept, essentially. You wanted to prove that it could be done. And I respect that a lot. In 2020, I'm debating starting a gym. And there's a lot of things going through my mind about it in terms of like investment and just all that stuff. But 2025, is it a good year to start a gym?
Every year is a good year to start a gym if you're the person who should start a gym. We should have an offline conversation about whether that's who you want to be or not.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sean, like I said, I want to respect your time, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to do this. I love your content, man. I love that you're posting thought-provoking questions and stuff, and people kind of get at it in your comment section, which is always good, but it's what we need. I mean, we need more people kind of pushing back against the status quo and all that stuff. So I appreciate you and I appreciate what you do, man.
Thank you, Randall. I'll add a little bit more to that last answer that I gave you, just for in case someone's not looking to open a gym, but they're thinking about something else.
Sure.
My uncle is a bigwig in financial markets. And one of the things he's told me when I've asked him, like, you think you should invest in that? You think now is a good time? His answer is never try to catch a falling knife, which means never try to time the market. And the same is true in your career. It's not like you don't wait until the market conditions are perfect for you to open your business. If you have a calling to do it, you don't need to have the right conditions to be successful. You're the outlier to those conditions. What you really need to be able to do is what we talked about earlier. Do some self-investigation. Are you the outlier? The answer to that is the answer to whether you should open your business or not.
Sure. I agree. All right. Well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate this. And I do look forward to talking with you offline about this further. But thanks again, man.
You're welcome.